So I was in a near-death car accident in 2014 as a passenger, hit a tree at 90 miles per hour. And I sustained a level 2 concussion. That's when you black out between 1 and 5 minutes. L3, L4 vertebrae fracture, bulging disc in my back, lacerated liver, which led me to lose half my blood supply. And we hit the tree so hard that it severed 2 feet of my small intestine. And in that moment, God put a book inside me called On Impact. And Impact is an acronym which stands for intuition, mastery, pivot, authenticity, connection, and teamwork. And it takes the reader through my journey from 11 years old delivering newspapers to modern day where we are now with an undercurrent of music. And at the end of each chapter, I've put together what I've assembled a hit list. So it's takeaways from the chapter for people to apply to their lives. And I feel I'm the person that can tell that story is because I've gone from paperboy to president and then intern to CEO. So I can meet everybody at their level.
I love it. Now, in the book, let's talk about the accident for a second. In the book, you mentioned as they were loading you into the ambulance, when the doors closed, you heard someone say, "I don't think he'll make it," or something to that effect.
Yeah.
When you think back on that, like, I don't know, like in the moment, if you grasped that or later on you thought about it, like, what does that make you think of? Like when you hear those words?
It's the value of time for me. And it was really interesting that you cited that. So that was probably, it's twofold, right? That's when I went out and then that's when I was reborn. Because the last thing I heard was that moment, like, he's not gonna make it, because when we hit the tree and they took me out of the car and they had me on the stretcher, the officer grabbed my hand, and it was actually probably the first time that I can recognize the transfer of energy, like real energy, from human to human. Like, your mother gives you a hug, your woman gives you a hug, your man gives you a hug, your children gives you a hug. That means something. You're on the brinks of life. Like, I felt his energy holding, like I was holding on to life, holding his hand. And as they wheeled me to the ambulance, the back of the ambulance, and he let me go, I felt the energy leave. So as he was holding me, I felt that energy that was necessary for me to continue. And he was reassuring me that I was going to be okay. I was going to be okay. So I felt the energy coming through my hand. I felt his words. I heard his words, and I felt all of that transfer. And when he let me go, obviously he had no idea that I could hear him. But as he let me go from the transfer of energy and they hoisted me on to the back of the ambulance, he told the person that was standing next to him, they asked, "How is he?" And he said, "I don't think he's going to make it." And then that was kind of like the last thing I heard. So I was able to, when I came out, was reflection on, one, it was a void because I was in a coma for like 3 days. And, it's insane. Like, when you're thinking about your present and you're really thinking about the afterlife and you're thinking about how valuable is, this space and time that we're in. And that's why it's so important to maximize every moment of your life. Like, you plan, and planning's important, but if you don't maximize and understand the day, then it's all a waste. I look at life now from a perspective of, each day is just a piece of the collage of my life, right? It's not going to be perfect. At the end, it's something that people can appreciate, but most important, it's each piece is representative of the whole puzzle. So I just got a little profound on it, but you understand?
I like it.
But yeah, that's the answer to that question.
How long did the recovery take before you were somewhat back to normal?
So this is really interesting too, right? And as Black men, there's a lot of different answers to that. So I'm gonna hit a couple of them.
Sure. So
I don't think that I've ever fully recovered, and that's not good or bad. Because now it's my story, it's my journey. So it's important, what has happened for me in the transformation. The physical aspect, my new 100% is only 80%, meaning like the things that, how I could operate and function because of all of what's transpired, I'm a different man, and making adjustments on being the man that I am and how to now continue to succeed based on, not limitations, but true life, right? Like at some point, you realize at 40 years old, you probably can't become a heart surgeon because you just can't put the time in. You may have, desire, aspirations, passion, not enough time, right? So it's okay, but you can also channel that energy into doing something different and special. But I realized from the mental aspect that I was holding a lot of trauma in the accident because I never spoke it out loud. And I remember going to the insurance company, for for the accident, and the therapist was asking me questions, just routine stuff going through, and I just broke down and started crying like a baby because I'd never actually, to that moment, spoke about the incident that really took place. Because you get in the book, you'll get I don't want to spoil it for anyone, but like I was literally in a car for a half a mile with a unconscious driver, and you think about your life, and death does happen in slow motion. Like the first thoughts that came to my mind when the driver was out was, what my mother had always disciplined us to do is speak to God. And the first thing I thought about was, Lord, I guess, I'm not going to see my family anymore, because that whole week I saw every individual, from my sister, dropped my son off at boarding school, celebrated my father's 70th birthday the day before, saw my mother who had Alzheimer's, and my wife and daughter were actually standing in the yard when we pulled out. And then the second thing was, Lord, I guess I'm going to see you soon, because, obviously this can't end pretty in any stretch of the imagination, that, a car without a driver at high speeds in the neighborhood, how is this going to finish? And then the third thing was I got mad with God, because in that moment, I didn't want to die, right? And had I known I was going to die that day, then I would have went to the barbecue, right? Like ultimately, I'd have did something. I'd have stayed home. I'd have did something different. But I was really glad that God didn't get mad with me, and gave me an opportunity to continue, because I thought about all of the celebrations I would miss. Thought about who would pour wisdom into my children, who would take care of my mother. And, those things were all pent up that I'd never discussed. So in that moment of conversation, I realized like there was real trauma in me that, I needed to figure a way out.
Thanks for listening to another episode of the Traffic Sales and Profit Show. Hey, do me a favor. If you enjoyed what you heard today, subscribe and follow us on this platform right now to make sure you do not miss a beat as we drop new episodes and additional content every single week. Also, if you'd like to get access to a free paperback copy of my book, access to the TSP Traffic Sales and Profit free Facebook group, our challenges, resources, our events, and more, make sure you visit us at www.trafficsalesandprofit.com/podcast.